Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching from. You're all welcome to my YouTube channel. So in today's tutorial, I want to show you how to draft a pattern that doesn't have a dart, like a dartless block. You know, this type of block I use for easy fitting clothes like shirts, shift dresses, clothes that are loose on the body. You know, example of such are your A-line, your shift dresses, your shirt dresses. So if you're experienced enough, you can equally draft this pattern on the fabric that you're cutting, but as a newbie, it's advisable for you to draft it on a pattern paper. Then you check for errors before you transfer it to the fabric to avoid damaging your fabric. So without further ado, let's get into it. In the video I will show you how to, I will list out the measurement that you'll be needing, okay, and how to achieve some of them in case you are not able to take the measurement. So I'm working with a neck circumference of 14 inches. So 14, you divide it by 5 is the standard. 14 inches divided by 5. I have 2.8 inches. So that's the width of the neck. The depth of it is 1 inch standard. 1 inch. You can do 3/4. Okay, let's do 3/4 inch standard. Okay, but for very large people you can do 1 inch, but moderate people 2 cm or 3/4 inches is okay. So you square these lines. All right, you square them out, make sure they are straight, you square them out. Then the next thing we'll do is our shoulder to shoulder measurement. I'm working with a shoulder to shoulder measurement of 14 inches. So half of this measurement is 7. Okay, so from the edge you mark it out 7 inches. Okay, so my armhole, the armhole circumference that I'll be using, I don't need to measure. The formula for it is your bust circumference divided by 4. Okay, my bust circumference is 34, divided by 4 is 8.5. so that's what I'm using, 8.5. okay, you mark it again so that you can get a straight line and you square it across. Okay, so the next thing you will do now is your back length. My back length is 15.5 inches. So that's what I'm imputing now. My back length 15.5. okay, so I'll take this measurement again because I want to achieve a straight line. 15.5. okay, 15.5 inches. Okay, here is my bust line or armhole line, and here is my waistline. Okay, so from my waistline to my hip line is 8 inches. It's usually 7, 8 and 9, but for moderate size people you can use 8 inches. Okay, mostly 8 inches, but if you are not sure about that, you want to really be sure, you can measure, you know, from the hip, from your waist down to your hip, the fullest part of your hip. Okay, mine is 8 inches and you square across. So this is your hip line. Okay, so the next thing we'll do is the shoulder to shoulder measurement. We are going to repeat it on this bust line here, which is 7 inches, and we square a line up. Okay, I will square a line up as you can see. So the next thing we'll do is to get our shoulder slope. Our shoulder slope is gotten by our shoulder to shoulder measurement, which is, for me, it is 14 divided by 10. What do I have? I have 1.4 inches. 1.4 inches. So this 1.4 you can get it on your tape if you're used to your tape lines, but if you're not used to it, you can just do 1.5. You know, I like, there's a video I made, I explained it better, that each of these line represents a measurement which some people don't know. They will just approximate it to the nearest one. You know, all this unnecessary approximation can give you excess at the end of the day. But since it's a free, easy fitting clothes, we can overlook some things. Okay, so what we'll do next is, from this place here, from this slope down, we're going to look for the center point. Okay, center point. The center point is what I'm marking now. Remember, this is your back. We are starting with the back block. This is your back. At the back here, you go in by half of an inch. You go in by half of an inch. Then you get your French curve, half of an inch. You go in at the center. Then on your bust line, you divide your bust. Okay, my bust is 34 divided by 4 is 8.5. 8.5, you are going to add is of 1 inch. 8.5 plus 1 inch will give me 9.5 inches. So you have to add the is. Okay, remember, is an easy fitting clothes. Then you connect with your French curve. Connect the three point. You connect this point here, this point here, and this point here together with a French curve. Okay, to get your armhole. Okay, so here we have it. We are done with the armhole. The neckline. So what you do is, at the neckline you have to go in by 1 inch. You know, 1 inch. As you go in by 1 inch, then you connect it from that point to so that's your neckline curve. So now on the waistline, what do we do now? On the waistline, you don't need to impute your waist measurement. So what you do is, you measure what you have on your bust here. This is 9.5 inches. 9.5 inches. What do? You minus 1 inch from it. That's what you put on your waistline. So we had 9.5. On this waistline, we'll impute 8.5 inches. So 8.5 inches. We're now going to connect it to the bust point. Okay, so we connect it to the bust line. Then on the hip line, you're going to use your hip divided by 4. Your hip divided by 4. Okay, 37 divided by 4. Okay, that's 9.25. Then you add 1 inch of an ease. Okay, and that will give you 10 and quarter. Okay, that will give you 10 and quarter. So you connect it with your hip curve. You don't need to use a straight line. You use a hip curve to connect it. All right, so with this now, you're not going to leave it this way. You go up by 3/4 of an inch from here, 3/4 or 2 cm of an inch. Then you blend it back to like midway on the hip line. Okay, because you don't want this sharp edge. So now we're done with the back bodice. We're going to quickly move to the front bodice. The front bodice is very similar to the back, just a few difference here and there, which I will make sure that I explain, I carry you along as we go. So now I'm moving to the front. So I'm just extending some basic lines which we'll still use for the front, like the bust line, which is the armhole, the same thing as the armhole line, the waistline and the hip line. We are still going to make use of these lines. So now I want to get a straight line. So from this edge, I'm just marking, so I want to use this as a starting point for the front. Okay, so sorry for the brown paper. I like using white because it's a bit clearer than this brown paper. I'll try and get the white one. Okay, now so the front block, we're starting it from this point here. Okay, so from here now, our neck circumference, again we are going to impute our neck circumference. The neck circumference I'm using is 14 inches divided by 5. Okay, is 2.8 inches. All right, 2.8 inches. Hope the camera is able to capture everything. 2.8 inches here. Okay, let me check. I want to be sure that the camera. Okay, 2.8 inches. So the depth is going to also be the 2.8 inches. All right, the depth is 2.8 inches as well. So I'll just mark it again just to be able to get a straight line at the end of the day. Okay, so I'm going to square a line. So this is it. The next thing I want to do now, I want to impute the shoulder to shoulder measurement. Half of it is 7, like I used for the front. You know, remember I told you that the back and the front is similar in some ways. So we'll repeat it again on the bust line, which is 7. Then I'll square a line up. Okay, so now that I have done this now, the next thing I want to do now is to get the shoulder slope. The shoulder slope for the front is a bit deeper than the back. Reason being that we don't want our shoulder line to be shifting backward. We want it to be centered. So the front shoulder slope is going to be a little bit deeper by 1/4 inch more than the back. Though if you use the same thing as the back, it's even better. It's better when it's deeper at the front than when it's deeper at the back, you know. But in this case, you can equally use the same thing. You can use the same 1.5 that you use for the front and use the same thing as the front, or you can add a 1/4 inch to the 1.5 for this front. But let's just use the same thing. Okay, sometimes it's good for you to experiment for yourself and see which of it works better for you. After all, our bodies are different, and then what works for me might not work for you. So I'm using a shoulder slope of 1.5. Remember how we got this shoulder slope is our shoulder to shoulder measurement divided by 10. Shoulder to shoulder, my shoulder to shoulder measurement is 14 inches divided by 10. I got 1.4. So I approximated it to 1.5, which is 1/2 inch. Okay, so now I'm getting the midway from this point here, from this slope point here to this bust line. I got the midpoint. So at the midpoint, I'll go in by 2 cm, which is the same thing as 3/4, 3/4 inch. Okay, on this bust line here, on the bust line, I will use my bust divided by 4. My bust is 34 divided by 4 is 8.5 plus 1 inch will give me 1 inch is ISO. It's not showing allowance, so I will still come back to that. So plus 1 is 9.5. So I'll get my French cuff as usual, and I'll draw in my armhole curve. I'll make sure I'm able to pick up the line in the point, this point, and this point on the bust line, you know. So I will get a perfect armhole curve. Okay, so there we have it. That's our front armhole, and with this if you have this French curve, it will save you a lot of stress because it will make your work so super easy. So here I am just drawing in my front neckline. So as usual, what we'll do now on the waistline, we'll measure whatever we have on the bust line. This is the bust line here. Remember, this is your front bodice. Okay, so you measure whatever you have on this bust line. Here I have 9.5. You minus 1 inch from it. So here I'll put in 8.5. That is, I minus 1 inch from what I used on the bust front. Okay, so you don't need to use your waist measurement because okay, let me tell you the reason why you don't need to use your waist measurement. For example, if you have this very tiny waist and you happen to use your waist measurement, say okay, you use your waist divided by 4 and you add 1 inch, is the slant will be too deep, and then when you sew it you have a funny look. Okay, but when you do this, you're just going to have like everything proportionate, like everything will just be how it's meant to be. Okay, then on the hip line, as we did before, hip divided by 4 plus 1 inch of an ease. Okay, but now there's a little bit difference here. Remember, your front is longer than your back, reason being that you have your bust at the front. So that is going to like come into play here. So at the front bodice, we are going to add 1 inch to the length. So from here now, you mark in 1 inch. So now we're not using the original hip length that we use for the back. So now this is the new length that we're working with now. Okay, so now this is the length we are working with. This is where we're going to put our hip divided by 4 plus 1 inch is, which is 10.25. So we get our French curve and we connect like we did for the back bodice, and you connect. Mind you, you can extend this to any length of your choice. Okay, but just remember that you're not adding this 1 inch yet. If you make, for example, you're making a gown with this now, is when you get to the maybe a knee length gown. At that knee length, that's where you put in the measurement you took for your front. That measurement you took for your front, that's where you're going to impute it, so that the front and the back will be able to balance up. Okay, you don't want a situation where you're wearing something and the front is looking jumpy. So always make sure you take accurate measurements. Whatever you're doing, measurement is very, very key. Okay, so now we have, this is your waist. I want to label, this is your waistline and this is your hip line. Okay, remember we did a kind of shaping at the side for this with 2 cm, that's 3/4. We're going to do the same thing. Now you know that we came down by 1 inch, so you have to take note of that 1 inch, which is here already. Then we're now going to go from here. Now we'll go up by the 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so that it will balance up with this when we are joining it together. Okay, the reason is so that it will balance up, because at the end of the day, remember, the sides must match up at the end of the day. So here we have it. In this pattern, you're not going to sew it this way because there is no allowance in this pattern. Before you sew, you make sure that you add sewing allowance all over the neckline, the armhole, the side. For the side, you can add like 1 inch, sewing allowance. Like if you check all these white people's clothes, they normally add like 1 cm, half of an inch. They don't add too much allowance. But since mostly our clothes are customized, meaning that we are sewing for a particular person, so there is tendency that there could be adjustment here and there. So our advice is to put in 1 inch at the side, then half inch at the armhole, half inch at the half inch or quarter of an inch at the neckline, because neckline doesn't really need too much bulk, too much clothes there, so they can lie down, they can lie flat. So this is our bodice block, front and back, our dartless front bodice block. Okay, I've done everything I need to do. Then the next tutorial that I'm going to post will be the sleeve for this dartless block, because the way you draft a sleeve for your dartless block is different from a sleeve for your fitting clothes. You know, this sleeve is meant to be more flatter. You know, the crown of it meant to be a little bit flatter than the other one, and it doesn't require too much ease at a cap. So thank you so much guys for today's for watching my video, and please, if you're new to my channel, I will be so happy if you subscribe, and please share my video with others. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.